Hey there, here's a quick run through of pretty much everything you will need to know when it comes to creating properties in HubSpot. To get here, you hit the gear in the top right corner and then go to data management on the left hand side and properties. The same process applies regardless of the object that you're going to be building the property for. So feel free to switch the object if you are looking to do this on, say, a contact versus company versus deal, or maybe you have custom objects in play in your account. You would want to make that adjustment first. So from here, hit the orange button to create a property in the right hand side. The next section that you're going to need to choose is the group. The group is one of those things where you can always change it later, so it doesn't really matter. And all it effectively does is if you're looking at a contact record and you're looking at all of their properties, you would see the grouping here. So it's more so important when you're thinking of this from a CRM use case and you want to bucket the important items if reps or users are going to be looking into this one by one. But generally speaking, it doesn't really matter. A lot of people just put everything into one bucket, and then once you have the CRM configured, choose what matters and put it into the sidebar, so you're not really ever going to the all properties section. So for this example, we'll just pick contact information, and we'll call this test property. The description is useful for users inside of the CRM to mouse over a specific property and see additional details about it. This is particularly important if the field is coming from an integration, typically, because then you can say, hey, this is coming through Zapier, or this is getting updated via the API, or this is coming in from Salesforce in this scenario. It's very useful for those types of things. If it's something pretty generic like phone number, you don't really need to have a description. From here, there is now the choice of what type of property is this. There's a whole bunch of them, and a lot of them really apply to how the property is used from a marketing perspective. So single line text, multi-line text, this is a single string. Effectively, these are the same, except for when it gets used in a form and how you see it in the CRM. So if it's something where you're going to say, hey, give us details about, what you need help with, probably better to use it as a multi-line text so that the rep inside of HubSpot can see it as more than one row instead of having to click into it. But the data is stored really the same. One thing to note is that HubSpot does have this super helpful doc that explains limitations and details around each of the property types, such as things like you're limited to a certain number of characters when you enter it through the CRM, but there's no limit when it's a form, and things like that. So I'll link this in the description just to be sure that you can review it as you need it. For the other types of options, things like single checkbox, multi, and drop-down, they effectively perform very similarly. Obviously, multi-checkbox allows you to do a multi-select, where drop-down, radio select allow you to do only one. The benefit here and sort of the difference is that if you're using this in a form and you want it to display as radio buttons, which I believe there's a little screenshot here, if you want it to display as a radio button, you would want to make that selection here. Keep in mind you can't change this afterwards, so do think about how you want to select it. Generally speaking, drop-down's a better route to go because it's a cleaner sort of visualization as far as the field goes, and if you have a bunch of options, it doesn't get sort of out of control. In the scenario like this, where you are using radio buttons, it very quickly becomes a mess and pushes your form super long when you don't necessarily need that. So just keep that in mind. If it's something where you're using it from within the CRM only, and this is a property just for the sales team, it really doesn't matter. You just have to choose between, do I want multiple or do I want a single, and go from there. The date picker option, this is a date only. This does not include date time. I'll link to another video where I walk through how to create these. They are a date time specifically. They are API only, so you can't utilize the UI to create it, but date times are incredibly useful if there is something you want to do a calculated property, or you want to do a variety of things and you need to know the specific time. You'll want to do a date time, not just the date picker. Then you have values. So you have numbers, you have scores. The scoring module lets you put in rules to say what increments the score, what decrements the score based on interactions people are having with, say, the website or marketing content or activities, whatever it might be. Numbers are just numbers. The interesting thing here is you can choose, is it formatted, is it currency, is it a percentage? So depending on the different types, you want to modify those. And then calculations, I'll probably make another video walking through these because it's a ton of stuff you can do here. But most of it's pretty self-explanatory. If you go into the builder, you can kind of write your own equation. But generally speaking, people are using these to say, give me the time between two different date properties, give me the sum or count of different objects that are related to this object. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with them, and they're super powerful. But separate video for that. Definitely comment if you want specific use cases built out there. And then a couple others, file. This is if you want to, within a form, allow somebody to upload a file, or you want that in the CRM. A lot of people use it for something like an NDA, where you're only going to have one of those for a specific client, and you want to have that really visible. Do we have an NDA? Yep, it's right here. It's in this file. HubSpot users, this is if you want an owner property. So maybe you have the general owner, so you have a typical contact owner that's defaulted in HubSpot, which is all users. And then if you want to do another user for, maybe it's an account manager, or maybe it's their dedicated support rep or something like that, you can have additional user fields and handle assignment there. And then finally, there's an option for rich text. This gives you the option to put in fully stylized HTML into a specific property. The most popular use case that I've ever seen is using this to capture data via the API and insert it essentially as a personalization token into an email. So instead of having to send through a variety of properties that you then use within an email, style it up, update it via the API into this property, which is already fully styled, and then it drops in styled into the email. So there's probably other use cases for it, but it doesn't strip anything out. Whereas if you put in HTML into a multi-line text or a single line, it's going to strip out all the styling. So keep that in mind if you have a use case for that. We'll just pick one simple one. For example, single line text. You continue on, and then there's a variety of different options. If you're going to use this in forms, leave this checked. Doesn't matter if you don't leave it checked, unless you don't want to use it in a form, but typically people just leave it checked. HubSpot has the option to include this in search results. So when you go to the CRM, the main page, and you want to search for something, the default searches are first name, last name, email address, and I believe phone and company name. If you want to have another field, maybe it's a user ID, or maybe it's favorite color, or whatever it might be, you can choose to enable this in the search results. Keep in mind that you are limited. I believe all accounts are limited to 3 properties per object. So keep that in mind. Other sets of things, validation rules that you can add in place. You can require this to be unique. So if somebody tries to enter, say, a customer ID, for example, and that is already in the CRM in some place, it'll give you an error, both via the UI as well as within the API. You can also set limits, etc. One thing to note is that all of these validation rules can only be set on the creation of the property, because HubSpot's not going to retroactively go back through your data and fix things if you were to, decide at one point you want to make them unique. So do keep that in mind when you're building these. It does require them to be set at the beginning. One other quick thing to highlight, if you're doing a field like a drop-down select, maybe it is, and you have to enter a bunch of information, HubSpot makes it really easy. If you have, for example, a spreadsheet that has, every state or every product you sell or whatever it might be, you can copy that row or copy that column, paste it right in. It adds them all in here for you. It does leave a blank one at the beginning, so be sure to delete that. But everything will be in there for you, so you don't have to enter them one by one. So saves a ton of time for creating any of these drop downs that may be super long. So hope this helps. There's a lot of power in creating properties and storing additional data inside of HubSpot. If there are any specific questions, toss them in the comments. happy to answer anything that might come up. Thanks, everyone.